Guys, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. My name is Abiola, and in today's tutorial we'll be creating this lovely top. This top can be paired with a skirt and it can be paired with a trouser. You've seen the inspiration and you've seen the outcome. Without further ado, let's head into the tutorial proper. The first thing I'm going to do is to mark all my vertical measurements, and I'm going to be starting with my shoulder to my bust point. My shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches, which I'm going to go ahead to mark. After which, I'm going to go ahead to mark my shoulder to my under bust, which is 13 inches. After that, I'll proceed to mark my shoulder to the waistline, and that is 17.5 inches, and that is where my top will be stopping as well. I'll go ahead to mark them again: 10, 13, 17.5 inches, just for me to get a straight line. Basically, I'll go ahead to rule the lines into a straight line, okay? And I would label, this is my bust point as in BP. I would label the second line, which is under bust, as in UB, and I would label the last line WL, which signifies waistline. Okay, the next step is to input my shoulder width divided by 2. My shoulder width is 15 divided by 2 gives me 7.5, but I went ahead to add half an inch to that 7.5, which equals 8 inches. So I went ahead to mark 8 inches as my shoulder width. The next step is to work on the neckline and to get our shoulder slope. So I'm going to go ahead to use 3 inches for now. So what I'm going to do is to mark 3 inches as my neck width, and I'm going to come down from the shoulder by 1 inch just to get the shoulder slope, and I'm going to connect from that shoulder slope to the 3 inches we marked as our neck width. The next step now is to get an armhole line, and for me, I usually calculate my armhole line by dividing my bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and that gives me approximately 8 inches, which is what I always work with. Please take your time to go through the calculation on the screen and insert your own bust measurement. So I'll go ahead now to mark the 8 inches that I got, and I'm going to rule that into a straight line. After ruling that into the straight line, the next step is to create our armhole curve, and to do that, I'm going to mark exactly what I marked on my shoulder line, which is 8 inches. I'm going to mark that here, and I'm going to connect that into a straight line. Okay, after that, on the armhole line, I am going to divide my bust circumference by 4 and mark whatever I have there. 38 divided by 4 gives me 9.5. So I'm going to mark 9.5 at that point, and on this straight line, I'm going to go ahead to divide what I have there by 2. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4 inches, so I'm going to mark the 4-inch point. Okay, after doing that, to get my front armhole curve, I'm going to go in by 0.5 inches, and I'm going to connect from the top of the shoulder slope to that point, and I'm going to use my curve ruler to complete the armhole curve. Basically, that's just it for your front armhole curve. The next step is to divide my under bust circumference by 4. My under bust circumference is 33. 33 divided by 4 gives me 8.25. So I went ahead to mark 8.25. The next step is to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. My waist circumference is 30. 30 divided by 4 gives me 7.5, which is what I marked. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to use my ruler to connect the points. After connecting the points, I'm going to go ahead to divide my nipple to nipple, or my bust span, by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So I'm going to mark that. I'm going to go up to mark that again just to enable me get a straight line. I'll mark the 3.5 again. In order to get the length of the dart, I'm going to come down from the bust point by 1 inch, and I'm going to mark that. Okay, so after marking that, I'm going to go ahead with my ruler and connect the point into a straight line. I'm going to be taking 1.5 inch dart, so I'm going to take 0.75 on each side of the line. That's because I want to take a 1.5 inch dart. Okay, so I'm going to connect the lines to meet with that point that we came down by 1 inch from the bust point, and that is my dart. Okay, now it's time to add our dart allowance and our seam allowance. I'm going to measure what I have on this my dart line, which is 1.5 inch. Okay, I'm going to measure that, and I'm going to put that at the side, which is going to cover up for the dart intake. Okay, then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. That's what I will be working with. You can add more than 1 inch if you want. I'm going to go ahead to the armhole line, and I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. On the underbust line, I am also going to measure the dart intake around that area, which is about 0.5 inches. I'm going to mark that because I don't want to be short of fabric at all. Then I'll proceed to add my 1 inch seam allowance, and that is it basically for all the allowance we need to add. So I'm going to go ahead to connect the point. Because we'll be using this front pattern to cut out the back pattern for this top, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the back neckline first. So for the back neckline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch as the neck depth and 2.5 inches as the neck width, and I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect the point. After connecting the point with the curved ruler, I'm going to go ahead to adjust the shoulder slope using my ruler just for it to connect to that 2.5 inches neck width. Okay, after doing that, I'll proceed to add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the pattern. Okay, that is very important. So I'm going to go ahead to connect that into a straight line, and that will serve as my allowance. After that, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the pattern, but I realized that I had not put in my back armhole, and that's just to connect from that midpoint area to the point I connected to basically for the front armhole. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to place the front pattern on a fresh piece of pattern paper and go ahead to trace out everything relating to the back pattern, which is the back neckline and the back armhole. The next step is to go ahead to keep the front pattern paper aside whilst we work on the back pattern paper. On the back pattern paper, I'm going to divide my bust span or nipple to nipple by 2, which is 3.5. I'm going to mark it again just like I did in front. The length of the dart for the back pattern is 5 inches, so I'm going to connect that into a straight line. Just like in front, I'm going to take 0.75 on each side of the line and I'll connect them. That's 1.5 inch dart. Okay, if you remember what we did in front. Okay, now I'll proceed to label the back pattern, after which I'm going to try to get my underbust line at this back pattern. And what I'm going to do is to use my tape measure to find 13 inches from the shoulder area. Okay, so I'm going to do that, but if that does not work for you as well, you can also go ahead to use your paper to trace out, your front pattern paper to trace out your underbust line, after we just connect that into a straight line. On the center back, I'm going to go up by 3.5 inches and I'm going to mark that. Towards the side seam line, I'm going to go in by 1.5 inches. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead with my curved ruler to connect from that point to this point. Okay, after doing that, I am also going to go ahead to connect from the neckline to the end. While this is very nice, I decided to adjust this to my preference, and I decided to go in from this point by 1 inch and then connect from the neckline to this point with my curved ruler. It's still the same thing, just that I wanted there to be a bit of space at the back. Okay, just for extra fit, basically nothing serious. You can just use the previous one I did. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead to highlight the part I'm going to cut off, and I will label it A and B, and I'm going to cut it out. After cutting it out, I'm also going to cut out this part. Okay, then on this line I'm going to go in by 1 inch just to make it equal with the top part, that's A, just to make it equal with A. I'll go in by 1 inch and connect that into a straight line and cut it out. So basically our pattern is looking good. Okay, both of them align perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead to get rid of the dart, and I'm going to fold that in, and I'm going to use my sellotape to hold that in place. Closing up the pattern is going to introduce a lot of irregularities on the pattern, which we are going to adjust. First, I'm going to adjust this curve because it's looking a bit funny at that area. Just use your marker and your free hand to just adjust that part and cut it out gently. After doing that, the next step is to also adjust the down part of this pattern because it's now up. Bring a pattern paper that has a straight end. Make sure the end is very straight, preferably a new pattern paper that you have not touched the edge. So place this paper on top of it so that it shows you how the pattern paper is not as straight as it should be. Okay, so you use your sellotape to hold that in place and go ahead to cut it out. That's basically the adjustment we are doing, just to ensure that the edge of this pattern paper is straight. That is very important. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now to cut out, and yeah, So everything is looking on point now, everything is looking straight and well organized. Now let's work on the front pattern. I'm going to go ahead to tape it down so that you guys will see everything I'm doing. Now I'm going to go ahead to elongate the dart so that they match with the end of the pattern paper. Okay, so after adjusting that, the next step is to label the pattern paper A and B. Okay, remember that what we use for our back neck depth is 1 inch. Now we're going to work with the front neck depth, which is going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that 2.5 inches and connect that to the neck width. Okay, the next step is to go ahead to create the opening that we'll have on the chest line, and to do that I'm going to measure what I have from the neck depth to the under bust, and what I have there is 10.5. 10.5 divided by 2 gives me 5.25, which is what I went ahead to mark. After marking that, on that point I'm going to go in by 0.5 inches. Do not go in more than 0.5 inches because that thing is still going to widen depending on your bust size. Do you get when you wear the top? Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to connect from this point, from the neck depth area to that point and to the under bust. Just watch carefully so that you do not make any mistakes. Ensure to avoid having any sharp edge. Okay, so just adjust everything so that it flows seamlessly. The next step is to go ahead and cut out, just like you see me doing. I would also proceed to cut out this dart, the top dart. Just cut it out. Okay, you'll find out the importance when we are sewing. Okay, now I'm also going to go ahead to fold in this dart. Okay, and I'm going to sellotape it just like I did for the back pattern. Okay, after doing that, I'm going to get a fresh piece of pattern paper that has a straight end. Okay, and I'm going to sellotape that. After doing that, I'm also going to proceed to straighten the top part of the pattern paper because it's no longer straight as well. An easy way is to measure what you have on this end, which is 5 inches. You go to the other end and measure 5 inches as well, then proceed to connect both points together. You get, so that gives you a straight line. So you now know what you're going to cut out basically. So I'm going to proceed now to cut everything out. Now for the front pattern, I'm going to go ahead to trim off the neckline, after which I would also trim off this part that I had already marked, that space in between the chest line. I'm also going to go ahead to trim that off. Now I'll proceed to label all the patterns so I don't mix them up. Okay, so I'll label everything for back pattern and everything for front pattern so that it's just easy. Okay, in our next tutorial guys, I'm going to show you how I cut everything on the fabric and how I joined everything to form the beautiful top that you see. Endeavor to hit the like button if you enjoyed watching and if you learned something from this video. If you want to see more videos from me, do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Yeah, leave me comments below. I'm going to respond to every one of them. Bye.